rest of that. And I'm still praying about whether I want to give y'all my slides or not. So, you know, everybody. In these areas that she's going to teach us on. And so I want to present to you guys none other than Lady Reddick at this time. Let's receive her in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen, amen. Thank you, Bishop, for that introduction. And I love that you say that credit is warfare, because a lot of us are afraid of credit. We fear credit, but how many of you know that God has not given us a spirit of fear, but a power, love, and of sound mind? So we don't have to fear credit. We just have to understand what credit is and what credit does, and how we can be in preparation to be ready when we need to receive credit. And in my profession, I work very closely with the underwriters as well as the lenders on both commercial side and the consumer side. So I have a bit of an understanding of what they're looking for, and that's what my focus with you guys today is going to be, focusing more on credit worthiness and comparing it to activities and behaviors of Christ worthiness. So what does that look like, and what does that sound like for those of us who are walking by faith and not by sight? What does that mean? It means having discipline. It means being disciplined when facing adversity. It means structure, meaning that we can beat the odds if we understand what we are facing and how we can overcome it. It means accountability, to focus when doubt seeks in. It means no distractions. This is what the worthiness of both credit worthiness and Christ worthiness means. It means having a winning attitude with a contagious determination. So I'm going to take you to the next slide. And what we're going to focus on tonight is more of the 5 C's of credit. And the credit worthiness for the 5 C's are character, cash flow, capital, collateral, and conditions. But what does that compare us to on what we're more of an expert in is Christ and Christ worthiness. And that is character, Christ flow, capital, which in return is longevity and favor. Collateral, are we collateral goods or collateral damage? And compassion. So I'm going to jump right in to the comparison for you guys. So when it's almost with the characteristics of character, cash flow, capital, collateral, and conditions, it's kind of like learning how to swim. It takes time, it takes patience, it takes discipline, and it takes determination. In order to have a lot, you must do with just a little. So that comes with understanding how to make the small things stretch for a longer time or even a longer term, becoming great stewards over what we have with the help of stability and our future understandings. So having the power to borrow is key because credit is your earthly ticket. So what is your heavenly ticket? It's faith. So again, faith without works is dead. In order for you to have credit worthiness or be credit worthy, you have to be willing to put the work in. You have to be willing to face all the odds and the no's and understand that those no's are really a not right now, because you have to focus to be prepared for your next. And that's on both sides. That's whether it's credit or with Christ. Either way, there has to be focus to be prepared for your next. So let's jump into the 5 C's of credit, y'all, which is credit, character, cash flow, capital, collateral, and conditions. So character, what character means is the mental and moral qualities distinctive to an individual. That's the Webster Dictionary version of what character is. It's the mental and moral qualities distinctive to an individual, the way someone thinks, feels, and behaves. Why do we use this to determine the decision and factor of credit? It determines your loyalty, it determines your dedication, your commitment, and your consistency to pay back what you borrow. So what does that mean? That means that you made a commitment to the lender, and you set an obligation aside to make a payment and make it on time. Means that you set and you signed that you commit to see this thing through from beginning to the end, and that you don't deter from the responsibility or the obligation. And it means that if in return that you fall short, that you call us first. Not saying you pay us first, but you call us first so that we can come up with a plan to help you stay on track if an event happens or life happens. So that speaks to your character to be able to set an obligation, to take the time to commit to it and see it through. But how do we compare character with Christ? This is no different than the exemplification of the fruit of the Spirit. Your determination to have love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, and self-control. He examines the heart through your act. So our Heavenly Father examines the heart, which builds character. And our creditors examines the character, which builds credit. So we're kind of one and the same. We're looking for the heartbeat of your credit, while God is looking for the heartbeat of your character. Let's jump into cash flow. So cash flow. Cash flow is cash on hand. This is cash on hand minus the expenses, which equals the cash flow. So can you manage after expenses? Once you have the cash and you pay the obligations, you pay the expenses, do you have enough to live off throughout the month and not paycheck to paycheck? Can you still make do after your obligations are paid and all of the expectations and needs are met? Do you have enough to sustain? So when a creditor is looking at your cash flow, they're looking to see that can you live off a certain amount of money based off of your rent or your mortgage? Do you have other obligations, car notes, creditors? Are there extra expenses outside of subtracting what you owe the lender? And then do you have enough to lend to yourself and live off, or do you need to borrow again? So if this is a one-time borrowing factor, or this is going to be a reoccurring thing that you now have multiple assets out or multiple obligations out to that lender, and now you can't afford to pay the first one. So with credit unions, we look at, even when you own a home, So do you have one lien or do you have two liens? So most think, oh, I own a home. If you pay your mortgage, you don't own your home. The bank owns your home. If there is a home equity loan line on your home, that's a second lien. So now the creditors and the lien holder owns your home as well as the bank. So who gets paid first? Your mortgage and then the second lien. So when you come to us, we're looking and we don't want to be third place. So now we're looking, can you afford to pay off the second lien, have the first lien, and then allow us to be second lien and still be able to survive? That's where most people fall short, because they look at, I can work paycheck, I can make it paycheck to paycheck, and I'm okay because I can make it through the 2 weeks. But reality is you can't make it. If you're living off of just one income alone, it's hard, and you can't sustain. So with the cash flow, in order, you can't live penny to penny. So how tight really is it? Now with comparing cash flow to Christ flow, this is you tithing, paying, praying, and then waiting. That's the Christ flow. You tithe first. You pay your obligations. You pray about your assets and your obligations, and then you wait for God to deliver. So are you able to see through and worship him through the bare minimum, or will you still give him everything he needs from you when your net is not enough? Do you give up when it gets hard? Do you believe that God is enough and you can do all things through Christ who strengthens you, especially when it feels unbearing and unfair? Or will you make do with what's left and still have enough faith for the next cycle? So that's the Christ flow. Can you make through and make do for your next in the next cycle and not second guess what God has already done for you? Do you understand that God is going to show up, and he's going to show up no matter the circumstances, and then you wait on the Lord and be of good courage? Or do you lean on your own understanding and put matters in your own hand and just focus just on that flow? That's the difference between cash flow and the Christ flow. I haven't moved in through these. So with your true character, this is your mental and moral qualities. True character is loyalty, dedication, commitment, consistency, and quality. Your Christ-like character is, again, your love, your joy, your peace, your patience, your kindness, your goodness, and your self-control. So they are one and the same. Your Christ flow and your true character have to match in order for your determination and your due diligence and your diligence to both a creditor and Christ to equally match. You can't have one without the other. If you fall short in any area, it all spirals downward, and you don't move forward, you fall back. So you need both. With the cash flow, again, here's a description of what that looks like. Cash on hand minus the expenses. Can you manage after debt is paid? How tight is your wallet month after month? And here it is. Where is your worship? Here is my worship. Is he enough? Can you worship with all that's left in you? Your net will sustain you through your faith, from grace to grace, from cycle to cycle, by tithing, paying, praying, and waiting. What is being used to build and maintain and grow? Growth is the cushion, the established investment, and the security. Spiritual growth, reading, worshiping, and praying. In order for you to grow financially, you have to have a spiritual understanding that all things that you need in order to guide you is in the source. So when you look to the source and you go step by step of what God is trying to help you endure and embrace, it spills and trickles into your capital as well as your spiritual growth. All right, let's talk a little bit about capital, y'all. So capital is the money used to build, maintain, and grow for future retirement. It can also refer to your net. You can be cash flowing and not capital growing as well. That means that a job without a savings or savings without a job. So if you have a job and you're not saving, then you're cash flowing. But if you don't have a savings and you don't have a job, or you have a job and not a savings, then you don't have any capital. It's the cushion that allows you to get through from day to day or month to month and even year to year. You must have a little saved by time, and everyone's savings should be different. So when you're sitting in front of an investor and they're looking for you to save and they ask you to save a certain amount of money, you probably should get up and walk away, because if they haven't taken the time to understand where you are financially and they're just asking for a certain amount of savings each and every month, that they don't have your best interest, which means that when time gets hard, they won't advocate for you to be able to receive your funds, which means that your funds are now locked in and they're not accessible because they didn't care what you had left when they asked for the savings. Your savings shouldn't be the same as your neighbor on your left or your right. So if you are continuing to save and you're putting money into a savings account, and before your next paycheck you're borrowing from that savings account, that means that you're saving too much. And that might sound weird. How can you save too much? Because savings is something for later on and for long-term assessing. So if you need it week by week, month by month, or day by day, then you're putting too much in the pot, which means you don't have enough to sustain. So if you're someone who can only save $15 and you're comfortable with $15 every 2 weeks, that's your saving budget. If you're someone who can save $50 and you're comfortable with $50 every 2 weeks, that's your saving budget. The moment you tap in, you should bring that number down and start over. And it's okay to go from the drawing board and start from the beginning often. It may feel hard or it may feel like you're not doing enough, but if you look over the course of, even if you save $15 a paycheck every 2 weeks, that's $360 a year. That's someone's electric bill in 1 month, but it's saved up and it's just a cushion. The point of having capital is to have cushion. I was speaking earlier talking about 401k. In your profession, when you sign into a 401k, it looks good long term, but the goal is for your employers, they get a stipend for every time you sign up for a 401k. So they're not just looking for you to have a 401k and they dangle that carrot of 3% on. That's already given to them. That's already in the pot waiting for you to sign up. That's not something that your the institution or the place that you work has set aside just for you. That's set aside for us all. So if you're in a space that you don't have a savings account, but you're paying into a 401k with a possibility of never having access to it, you may want to halt for a second, pay more into a savings, and then when you get to an amount that's comfortable and feasible for you, go back to paying into your 401k. Because in reality, the 401k amount that you have in it at this time, it's going to gain interest anyway. So even if you stop for a year and you halt in paying into it, it's still gaining interest, and what you would have put into it would have already made its way into the account within 12 months. So capital is the cushion, but you have to be wise about how you create the cushion, and you have to be wise about how you build it up. So again, when lenders are looking at your cushion, they're looking at how long it was sitting. So some of us may be waiting for our tax returns, and we want to put money into a savings account. That's great, but when a lender looks at that, they can see that this was a short time saving. This is something that you've done just because it looked good on paper. It looks good for a short time, and then they already have made in their mind that within 6 months of them allowing you to borrow, that you're going to take that money out and you're going to use it for something else. So they're not looking at that as something positive. They actually look at it as a negative. So saving a short amount or a small amount looks way better than depositing a large amount into your account at one time. That's the same thing with credit. Some of us think that if we get our tax money, we can pay our debt off, right? We want to use this money wisely and pay our debt off. That's great. It looks good, but it takes 8 months for the credit score to even rise. So you might as well use that funds as a cushion, put it into a savings account, and pay your bills on time every month. So don't think about it as a short-term fix. Look at it as a long-term fix. And again, with credit, it's like a roller coaster. It's going to go up and down, up and down. And if we knew the formula, we wouldn't need Experian, Equifax, and TransUnion to make the decisions for us. So therefore, there is no formula. There is no right or wrong way. It's just be on time. Just be on time, which means that we need to be strategic about our finances, and we need to be stable with our commitments. So strategic and confident that whatever we decide that we can put our trust in, that we see it all the way through. And when we compare capital on the spiritual realm, remembering that even blessings are recyclable, so they come around often with growth. So again, your time with God is consistent investment that you must get and give generously. You will start off by giving a little bit of your time. You will start off by reading a little bit of your word. You will worship on a shorter term or different than the person next to you, or you'll pray in a shorter prayer. And don't forget your tithing. Your tithing will start a little bit smaller in the beginning, and then you grow into your 10%, and if God really, really sees it through, your 20%. If he really sees it through. So, but he's still a rewarder, right? But he will still reward you big while sowing spiritually. That's the capital. So even though you made that commitment of 10%, God will reward you big just by setting the expectation to self and committing to God's will. Sometimes we think that we don't have enough, but if you take a little bit and you trust and have faith with the little bit, God will reward you big. I can speak to myself with the testament. Last year, I prayed and I asked God, I said, if you provide more for me, if you give me a little bit more, if you give me an advancement, you increase my income, I'll tithe more. I can give more, and I can give back to the kingdom. And I can tell you that God heard me in my prayer, and I got 4 increases in 1 year. I got 4 increases in 15 months. I was up to 4 increases. And it's so ironic. God has a sense of humor because each increase was 10%. I was like, okay, so you gonna stick to this 10%. Okay, he has a sense of humor. Okay, God, I hear you. Each increase was a 10%. Now, too much is given, much is required, because I went from being responsible for self to being responsible to 80 people. So there was work to be done. I'm working off my increase. However, God showed me that if I was consistent and if I prayed and asked, I would be rewarded if I stuck it through. And so each time I would increase my 10%, but then I will round up. And every time that I saved or I tithed into my increase, I said, God, I'm going to round up every quarter. I'm going to round up every quarter. Every quarter, I'm going to stick to it. I'm going to start with this. I'm going to start with this 10%, and I'm going to round up every quarter. That was before the increases. Every quarter, I got an increase. Every quarter. And I'm like, wow. Just acts just like that? Just like that. Listen, I'm like, okay. And starting a church is not easy. The financial burden falls on the weight of the leaders in the beginning. And he showed me that even though my husband, he makes more than me. But every time he increased, I said, God, I have faith. And I feel the favor over my life. So every time he increased it, I matched his. And I matched his 10%. Every time he increased, I increased by faith and supplication. And I believed that God was going to do it. And he saw fit. Now, my annual doesn't match his, but my faith does. So I'm not where he is with the net, right? But my growth spiritually, my growth in my Christ-worthiness has allowed me to sustain, and I haven't felt the weight of giving. I haven't felt the weight of giving, which means we haven't lacked anything and we haven't gone without. So it's okay to start that foundation, and it doesn't matter where you are in the process. Just start. It doesn't matter where you are in the process. I ain't gonna fool with these notes. I'm just gonna talk. It doesn't matter where you are in the process. With the cushion, it's important to be consistent. And again, start with a little and grow, but grow with your faith. If you just have the mustard seed faith, a little will take you a long way. So if 10 is your number, then be consistent. Be consistent with your 10. If 20 or 30 or 50 is your number, be consistent with your 10, because this consistency has the longevity. And when they pull your statements, when you're going to ask for the lender to give you something and they ask for statements, they're going to see the consistency in the statements. So they're not looking for your word. It's not, my word is bond. That's not what this is. It is the consistency in the black and white. And what I love about that, when I compare the consistency in the black and white of your statement, is no different from the consistency in the black and white of the source. Yes. It's the same thing. We have to follow it. You have to have a trail. And God left us a paper trail in the Bible to allow us to be able to go back and look over where we've gone or what we're going to endure and understand that there is after this. There is after this. So again, tithing and preparation and sowing is your Christ-like capital. So now let's take a look at collateral. What is collateral? Available assets to leverage while promising to commit. Examples of collateral is property, investments, assets, 401k, CDs, which are certificates of deposits, your vehicles, and more. So with collateral, some of you may be able to pledge these things. So what we're looking for is if you fall short with a lender and you can't commit to an obligation, what can we use to hold to be able to recoup what you have borrowed if need be? Now, I'm going to be very clear. A financial institution, a bank, for me, I work for a credit union, but a bank is not looking to take your home. They don't want it. But it's great collateral, and it allows them to be able to use that to show, for them to see how well you're able to maintain. So having a mortgage is important to a financial institution because it's a part of your portfolio when they're looking at your credit. It's better to have it than not have it, but what are you doing with the portfolios and the trade lines that are already there? So a credit card is looked at totally different than a mortgage. A credit card is looked at totally different than a line or a loan, as well as a vehicle. There are FICO 1 through 8 that we're looking at, and each FICO and the score is different depending on what you're looking to borrow. So when they pull your credit and you're wondering why we have so many credit hits, it depends on what you went to borrow. So if you go into a bank and you want a auto loan, they're going to pull your credit, and that's a FICO 6. When you go for a credit card, it's a different hit, that's a FICO 8. When you look for a loan or a line, that's a FICO 5. So now there's 3 different hits on your credit for 3 different things, and they're scored differently. You may go into the bank and you'll qualify for a credit card, but you won't qualify for a loan. Or you'll qualify for a line of credit, but not a loan, or vice versa. Or maybe you'll qualify for a vehicle loan for $18,000, but they gave you a credit card for $30,000. Doesn't make sense. But it's based off of the score and how Equifax, Experian, and TransUnion decide they want to score you. And each score is different. Each pool is different. So it also depends on the state that you live in. So if you're in Pennsylvania, most of the times they use TransUnion. If you're in Delaware and you go to a credit union, they're using Experian. If you're in Delaware and you go to another financial institution, they're using Equifax. So it just depends, and that's why each score is different, because they're not all reporting at the same time, and they're not reporting the same information. But with the collateral, that's what they can hold as leverage, along with your character and your cash flow, to determine, are you still creditworthy? So you can have all of these things and have a great portfolio and still not be creditworthy, because you didn't take the time to understand the credit, to understand the need and your borrowing power. So it's totally different if you don't understand why you're borrowing, or am I borrowing because I want to, or I'm borrowing because I need to. And if you sit in front of a great financial advisor, they take the time to understand your want and your need, but they advocate more for your need. And they educate on your want and help you understand that it's a not right now, and here's why. Now, when we compare collateral with Christworthiness, that's a little different. So that's a little different, because are we collateral goods, or are we collateral damage? Does our faith hold value, or can we collect on our faith when we feel lost or damaged or abandoned or forgotten? So do we lean on the understanding of the word, or do we lean on our own understanding? Leaning on your own understanding is collateral damage, because now you are preparing your own path. You're following your own destination. You're following your own direction, leading yourself down a dark hole that it takes more time to pull you out of than when you fell into it. That's the collateral damage. The collateral good is you saying, God, I need you. God, I desire you. God, help me. God, direct my path. God, give me the instructions that I need. Lord, walk me through this. Lord, be with me all the way. Lord, work me through this. Lord, have mercy on my decisions. Lord, help me decide to choose you and not that. Lord, help me understand my want and my need. That's collateral goods. But the collateral damage is the one that thinks that you are self-made, the one that thinks that you are self-worthy and that you can do with yourself and not the help of the Lord. So when you compare collateral and having what you need in those assets, are you assets? Are you an asset to the kingdom? Are you an asset to the people in your neighborhood? Are you asset to your teammates? Are you asset at work? Are you asset at home? Are you fit and stable, or are you unstable? Because when we're unstable mentally, most of the time, it then deteriorates our finances. It deteriorates our personal fit. It deteriorates our professional fit. So when you can't mentally get through day by day and your finances is off track, it's hard to stay afloat, it's hard to stay focused, and it's hard to stay fit. So we have to determine when we're comparing whether we want to be credit-worthy or Christ-worthy. We want to start by being Christ-worthy and be collateral goods and not damage. James 2:26 says, "For as the body without the spirit is dead, so faith without works is dead." The NIV version of 2 Corinthians 9:6, it says, "Remember this, whoever sows sparingly will also reap sparingly, and whoever sows generously will also reap generously." This builds capital and collateral, which in return equals your Christ worthiness and your credit worthiness. So are we Christ wise and credit wise, or are we collateral damage? So with these conditions and knowing that we collect on, listen, y'all, we can collect on God's love. We can collect on his promise. We can collect on the purpose that he has for our life while collecting in his strength. When we default to our commitments and agreements, we can fall on the collateral. Again, collateral goods. Y'all still with me? All right, let's talk a little bit about conditions. Conditions is a really cool one because conditions is the life conditions, and they are external factors that influence life strategy, planning, and decisions. This includes economical decisions that you make, the market of which you are surrounded, the political things that you hear and or are focusing on, technology is part of conditions, your culture, and the custom factors. Our main struggle in generational negativity and doubt is poverty, mental instability, and remaining complacent. We get into a space where because my mom did this, or my grandmother did this, or my cousin and my family were able to sustain with this, that it's okay. And we don't think outside the box or reach for something bigger. We don't teach our kids how to save. We don't put money to the side because everyone before me did it this way, and that's okay. And then we allow society and politics to keep us captive and bound to, mental instability, or you're living in based on your income, and they told you that if you make too much money, then now you have to pay more, or if I get a better job, then I'm no longer going to be able to stay in this particular housing, and they're compressing the ability for you to grow out of that poverty or oppression. They want to hold you there because they don't want you to have better. They don't want you to do better. They don't want you to be bigger than where they are. So why they gentrify your areas, why they gentrify the marketplace, why they talk about economic growth, they're putting you down and they're not allowing you to grow because now I can't make more because I won't reap the benefits. I can't, if I go down to the Social Security office, they're going to ask me all these questions and I have to answer all of these things. And now I can't receive the benefits. Those aren't benefits. They're not benefits. They are there to help you. They bridge for your right now to your better. And because they talk more about how you work better with it than talking about how to get you out of it, you're stuck in those conditions. So now we don't want our kids to get a job at 14 or 15 because now we have to add them to the income that we're sending over to the, we don't want our kids to understand finances because then they're going to have more questions about what happened to the piggy bank or the finances they thought they had. They thought they had a savings account, but we had to use it for bills. So now they're going to ask questions. So we don't want them to know about the finances part of it. We don't want them to save because everything they make we need to use because we didn't save. And it's putting us in a place of condition that we can't understand, or now we're feeling like we're going to starve if we want better, that we're not going to make it if we do better. And so now we just decide not to, and now we're just held down and our mental space is stuck. So when we look at conditions, we're looking at, can you overcome those things? So when you're in the economy, especially those who have, how many of you have businesses? How many are business owners? So even if listen, this should be all hands should be up. We are entrepreneur or something, right? But when we're looking at even giving to businesses, we look at the conditions of where you decide you want to open a storefront. How many other stores on that block do the same thing you do? That's the conditions that we're looking at. Does the marketplace need what you have to offer? So if you are a beautician and there's a beautician on every other block, the market doesn't need another beautician. So now we say no. because you didn't do the research to look around and see the geographic of the area and understand the demographics around you and the need of the neighborhood. When you borrow, it's not just about us giving to you, it's about the need. Are you going to be able to open your doors and provide jobs to the community? Are you going to be able to give someone else a lending hand? It's not just about being DEI and just giving you, as some say, a handout. It's supposed to be a hand up. So it's supposed to be the requirement and the expectation and anticipating you growing in the community so that we can get a rate of return back. So our investment is not just about you coming in with your blueprint or you having written down what you're going to do with your business, and then we take it for face value. Have you sat down and really mapped out what that looks like when you are a business or business owner? Does it make sense for us to invest? Because it's an investment for the lender as well. So it's not about can you really pay back? Do you have the means to pay back? And does the community that you in desire you to pay it back? Do they want you there? So when we go out, we assess the building, we assess the neighbors, we assess the stores. We go in and we kind of micromanage and assess how they are doing in the neighborhood before we even say yes. Are they flourishing? Because if the block, what they say, if the block is hot, if the block is not hot, then our return is going to be cold. And now we're not going to be able to recoup what we've given, and now you owe us that plus interest. It doesn't make sense. So we say no. But with the conditions, if it makes sense in the technology, are you on social media? Do you brand? Like, in order for us to help brand you, are you branding self? Like, we are brand ambassadors of self. So in order for us to brand a business, it starts with you. It starts with you branding. When we Google you or we look you up on social media, what comes up? We look at your reviews. Are there any reviews? Has anyone said how great your product is? Has anyone contested to what you say is an awesome product? Most of the times we go out and we buy it. There's been times where my boss will go out. We had someone who needed a commercial credit card for a winery, and he decided that he wanted to sell wine in what we call it the ABC stores, but I forget what they call it here. But we went out and he bought the bottle. He tried it and he was like, "This is disgusting. I'm not investing in it." He said no. It was horrible. He said, "We don't want pomegranate wine. That don't taste good." And we decided not to, because he's like, if we're not going to invest it, why would we invest in something no one's going to buy? If it's just on the shelves and now we're giving you a credit card for you to market what don't taste good. It doesn't make sense. So he said no, because he went out, he tried it, it didn't work. But on the other hand, we have a key lime pie company who everyone loves. Now, I tried the key lime pie. I ain't like it. But it's a seller. In Delaware, it's a seller. It's a hit. And they make a lot of money. And it was a great investment. So sometimes you can be good debt to the investor. It's debt to them, but it's good debt. Because now they're gonna recoup what they've given to you times more. So in order for you to be able to be conditionally stable, you have to educate yourself and expose yourself and have a mindset that what I'm putting out, I'm going to triple to be able to give back. And then when I give back, I can borrow triple, because now they're willing to expand their investment to you because they've seen you borrow it and pay it back. So that's what conditions are. But when we think about conditions, to me, when I think about conditions, I compare conditions to Christ's compassion. We must understand that wherever we go, whatever we do, our compassion for the people we encounter, both professionally and personally, is the gateway to our purpose. We can move, function, or grow with our compassion. This last C solidifies our passion and love for Christ. His compassion has no conditions, y'all. Even though we're looking for conditions on the credit side, Christ has none. There's no conditions. So neither should ours. We shouldn't have conditions when we look for building our response to God. When we build our prayer life, when we build up our anticipation of the return of what God has in favor and in store for us, we shouldn't have any conditions. We shouldn't put a time frame on how long we pray. We shouldn't put a time frame on when we read our Bibles. We shouldn't put a time frame. It shouldn't be that you're listening to the Bible app on your way to work or home, and that's the only time that you're listening to seek God's wisdom in his word and his will for you. It shouldn't be conditions. It should be now that wherever I am, whatever I'm doing, this set time is for him with no conditions. I now have a set timer at 12 o'clock, no matter where I am. I'm stopping what I'm doing and I'm bowing down to him. When I'm in my office, I shut my door, I turn the light out. And I've had people knock on they come to the door and they say, I saw you were in a moment. Yes, I was in my moment. Don't interrupt me. This is my time. This is my condition. And on my calendar, it says personal time. I don't owe you an explanation of what 12 o'clock means to me. It means that this is my unconditional time with God. And I'm going to do it wherever I am. If I'm driving and I need to pull over, then I'm going to pull over, because when I need God to pull over for me, or I need him to walk before me, or I need him to walk behind me, or I need him to be beside me, I anticipate he's going to do it. I expect nothing less, because God is with me and he's going to be beside me always. So why would I put a condition on my time with him? So again, with the condition, it is the compassion. And we have to have Christ-like compassion. So we think of the conditions, it has to be conditions for the creditor, but unconditional on the compassion side. Matthew 6:33, but seek first the kingdom of God and his righteousness, and all these things will be added to you. This is your human capital. We must seek God's wisdom and exemplify the ways of Jesus and watch God expand his grace unto us. This is your Christ-worthiness. We can build with one prayer at a time and create a space for God to fill it, expanding our self-worth, and expanding our Christ-worth. We want to be exposed to him. We want to open our arms and open our hearts to him, for him to embrace us so that we can embrace all the things that he's going to add to us with those seeds. So in these next 10 months, y'all, we will and we shall develop character, Christ flow, capital, collateral, conditions because of preparation. The kingdom will benefit from you successfully carrying out these 5 C's through your discipleship, through your discipline, through your structure, your accountability, your time, your talent, and your token. No distractions. No distractions. With mustard seed faith, prayer, and realistic goal settings, you have to start and let God take care of the rest. So it has to be it has to be a smart plan.